Yo, what's good people? Today we're going to be reviewing the Flatbox, the LED Flatbox. So I have it here. As you can see, super small controller. And as you can see by the title, I named it the potentially Snackbox Micro Killer because it really does remind me of the whole footprint of the Snackbox Micro. It's really thin, compact, and yeah, it's just super small, convenient as a controller, as a leverless controller. And actually I found myself using it a lot more than I anticipated at the beginning because, you know, if I want to just do a quick labbing session, I don't want to get out the big hitbox. I built my own hitbox, so the case is massive. I'm not gonna lie, it's heavy, it's big, but it does have the best components in it, so that's why I continue to use it. Whereas this is solid for the price, absolutely solid for the price. It has everything you need to kind of get started with leverless style controller. So I think this is the leverless controller I would recommend to people that want to kind of dabble here and there, because, you know, leverless style controllers can be very expensive. They can be, you know, upwards of £250, which is translates to, I don't know, $300+. So definitely not cheap. So this being at $30 is a kind of a no-brainer, really. It's really good. Just before I touch on the AliExpress listing, and I know AliExpress, but my experience with AliExpress and this product has been excellent. The shipping was what, I live in the UK, right? So it ships from China and it came within 6 days, free shipping. So can't complain really. $30, you know, free shipping. I really didn't have a problem. So obviously I know AliExpress does kind of have a stigma behind it, but my experience is very good. So I recommend people to try it. If you are, you know, in the market for a leverless style controller, definitely check the link out. As you can see here, USB-C, which is always nice. And one thing I'll say about the USB-C port is it feels very sturdy. So I've actually got the cable here, so I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So this is me plugging it in, and like it requires a little bit of force to get it out. So it's not a cheap flimsy USB-C cable. It feels very solid, and yeah, it's just, I mean, for the price, you can't, even if it was cheap for the price, you know, you can't really complain. But because it's solid, everything about the product is solid. I mean, for the price, it's just insane. I think the only thing I would say is the plastic is 3D printed and it is a little bit flimsy, but again, for the price, you can't complain. I mean, it's just excellent for the price. I'm gonna keep reiterating the price because the price is just insane, and look how thin it is. I keep saying how it reminds me of the Snackbox Micro, and you know, it is a really thin piece of hardware. So these are keycaps obviously, and then we've got the whole enclosure, and yeah, it's just thin. And you know, if you did want to take this to a local casual session offline, you could do that. I work full time, so I know I don't have space with my work laptop, with my files, with my, you know, my equipment, and then to put a big leverless style controller in the back, no chance. So this is absolutely perfect if I want to pull up to, you know, a casual offline session. I could do that definitely, and I think it's a controller that you absolutely could main as your leverless style controller. You could absolutely main this. It's not something that I think only could be used for sessions here and there. I do actually think it's solid enough to be your main controller. So we're going to talk about the components. We're going to talk about the switches, the board, just features and stuff. It's honestly a full package, and at $30, even if it didn't have something, you can't actually complain. It's $30, right, with free shipping. So do me a favor, like, comment, subscribe. Liking will help with the algorithm, commenting will also help with the algorithm, and then subscribing will let me know that you enjoy the content. Let's get into it. Okay, so we have the listing, and as you can see, this goes on sale all the time. So right now it's £31. I actually managed to snag it for 25, so that translates to about $30. So this would probably be about $40 now, but again, super cheap. So I chose the black because I just didn't like how the white looked, so I chose black. In the box comes this keycap puller, because actually one thing about it is it's hot swappable, which means if you do not like these red switches that come stock, as you can see, it says red switch. So if you don't like the red switches, and actually I think the red switches are really solid, but if by any reason you don't like these red switches, you can always just swap them out for any low profile switch. So these are actually KO switches, as you can see, KO switch. So legit switches, they're not some cheap switch. These are legit. That's why the inputs feel so good. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to do a play test, I'm going to do a sound test, all that stuff. So definitely stay tuned for that. Keep an eye out for that, because that is, I think the switches, I always say this with leverless style controllers, is the switches really determine how a controller can feel. Sometimes it can be the housing that kind of alters the sound, but ultimately how it feels to play on, the switches really do influence that the most, I feel like. As you can see, this kind of display shows it a little bit better. So yeah, can choose whatever switch you want. So that's the hot swappable switches. Then we have the LEDs. The LEDs are really sick because actually you can choose how bright the LEDs are. So you can change how bright they are. You can turn them off if you don't like them. I have them on like I think there's 4 intensity settings, and I think I have it on the 3rd one. The 4th one's a little bit too bright for me, so I turn it down just a touch. But yeah, the fact that it gives you this option being $30 is just, for me, is just insane. Like I actually couldn't believe it. When it came, I was like, okay, cool. I plugged it in, I played with it, I started backdashing, I started doing just random inputs, and I was like, yo, this is crazy. So yeah, it has static colors, it has rainbow cycles, it has whatever this is, rainbow chase, it has more themes. So again, you can really customize the LEDs to your liking, and obviously if you don't like them, you can turn them off. You can adjust the brightness, which is excellent. And then obviously we have USB-C, and the cable is provided. Pretty solid cable, pretty good length as well. Connectivity, what can you play this on? So PC, obviously. PS3, yes. PS4, now the PS4 is a bit weird because it only supports games that have legacy support. So I believe Tekken 7 has legacy support. I think Street Fighter 6 has legacy support. So any fighting game that has legacy support, this will be plug and play. Now the board they use is the GP2040 Community Edition. And actually I use this board for my cross-up build. I can vouch for this board. It's very good, very, very good. It basically has no lag. Like it's a competitor to the Brook board essentially. No latency, very, very good. So the board is legit. There's no lag. The switches are legit. It's light, it's compact, and it has an OLED screen, which I think is really sick because with the OLED screen, you can actually test your SOCD and your inputs. You can see it here. It's like a mini OLED screen. So whenever you press an input, the button will appear white. Now with the SOCD, what that does, if you hold a direction and you hold the opposite direction, there'll be nothing. So it will look like this. So there will be no inputs registered, which is what you want with SOCD. I mean, it depends what SOCD mode you're using, which this actually supports. So supports multiple SOCD modes. So it supports up priority, neutral, and second input. So last priority. So what that means is the up priority means when you hold down and you press up, you actually get up instead of neutral. Neutral is when you press down and up, you get neutral. And the second input priority means the last input you pressed will come out. So that's, I mean, depending on what game you play, like for example, games with super jumps, you would want up priority because you just press down up without going to neutral. So that's really, really helpful to do super jumps and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, depending on what game you play, you might want to mess around with the SOCD modes. But I think for Tekken specifically, I think neutral is the best mode for me personally. I think neutral is crazy good in Tekken. So as you can see, complete full package. We're gonna get straight into the sound test and then the play test. So I'm gonna describe how the switches feel, how it feels to generally just play with it. Okay, so now I'm gonna just move around and kind of describe my initial thoughts on the controller. And honestly, as I was saying before, I really feel like this controller is solid. It could be your main controller for sure. I mean, it's really small, so I actually prefer to play it on a desk, on a flat surface. Definitely playable in your lap, but for me, it's a little bit too small, so I prefer to play it on a planted surface. But yeah, it's super solid. Like, look at my backdash, look at the, and I put the inputs on so you can see, like the inputs are really, really clean. So I think, yeah, it could definitely be your main controller. And the switches, I always say, but the switches ultimately determine how a controller feels. So these are Kel Reds, legit switches. Obviously, if you don't like them, you can switch them for, I personally feel like the tension in the switches is just perfect. So you're not going to get misinputs. Like if you rest your fingers on the buttons, which I do a lot, you will not get misinputs because it takes a little bit of force to actuate, but not too much force, if that makes sense. I think it's just perfect, just right for the amount of force that you are required to actuate the button or the switch. So for me, it's perfect. And I like a mixture between responsiveness but also not making misinputs, if that makes sense. You would say, well, you know, to get that responsiveness, why don't you just have switches that are easier to actuate? Well, it kind of works opposite. So it's like if you go too high, they become too hard to actuate, so the responsiveness goes away. If the switches are too light, the responsiveness also goes away because you're going to get misinputs. So you will be more susceptible to misinputs if the switches are too light. You would then have to change the way you actually play with the controller. So you would have to lift your fingers off the buttons to not get misinputs. I like to rest my fingers on the buttons while I'm playing. So for me, this kind of mixture between having force to actuate, but then also being sensitive enough to get the input I'm pressing when I'm pressing it is perfect for me. So I really do enjoy the Kale Reds. It's the same with gamer finger buttons. That's why I really love gamer finger buttons, is because it also has that blend of not getting misinputs, so it won't actuate if you rest your fingers on the buttons, but also when you press them, they're responsive enough and they actuate quickly enough, if that makes sense. So it's a really nice blend, and I feel the same way about these switches. And you would think $25 or £25 or whatever, $30, you know, everything's going to be cheap, but it's far from it. So I really think this could be your, if you're looking to get into leverless controllers, this definitely could be, you know, one of your first pick. I think this should be your first choice because it's cheap. If you don't like it, well, you know, it was only 30 quid, so, or $30. So, you know, it's not breaking the bank. I'm going to do Raven's hard combo. This is the hard bit. So as you can see, no issues there. As you can see, no issues with inputs. Super responsive. And also the PCB inside it is a GP2040 CE. So I actually used it, as previously mentioned, I used it for my cross-up build. So I can really vouch for this board as well. The only issue is it doesn't have native PS4 and PS5 support. So if you wanted that, again, it's $30, right? So if you wanted that, you could just pay for a wingman converter or something else. There are other alternatives to provide kind of native PlayStation support. But again, it's $30 and it's your first introduction to leverless controllers. So personally for me, I think, you know, if you were looking for native PlayStation support at $30, you're kind of kidding yourself, really. I mean, it sucks that it doesn't have native support. It only has support for games that support legacy controllers. So you would have to look up the list. I believe Tekken 7, Street Fighter 6. The main games, I think Guilty Gear Strive has it. Don't quote me on that, but I think it does. Mortal Kombat 1 does have it. So yeah, on the PlayStation 4, you're kind of set. PlayStation 5 is where it gets a bit tricky because your only real option then would be a PlayStation 5 converter. So something like the Wingman from Brook. So you can actually use that for this leverless. And as I said, this is $30. I think Wingman's what, $40? So $70 package, and you can plug and play straight into the PS5. So yeah, inputs, super small, super compact, super thin. It just has so many bells and whistles. It has an LED screen to see what you're pressing. So when you change your SOCD mode, like for example, if I change it to, I don't know, up priority, well, if I hold down, you might not be able to see it, but it's flashing white now. And if I press up, I have it in neutral mode, so it's going to disappear. But if I had that as up priority, you would see the up input flash, if that makes sense. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to the big screen so you can actually see what I'm talking about. So the screen is here. So when I'm pressing down, the white input comes up. If I'm holding down and up, neutral SOCD mode, so nothing's going to show. Left and right, same thing. Then I'm pressing 1, 2, 3, 4. You can see the inputs are registering as I'm pressing inputs. So as you can see, just some butterfly loops. As I said, I don't know the combos in Tekken 8, but I still know how to butterfly loop, so that's good. Yeah, as you can see, inputs are super clean, and yeah, I really recommend this controller for people that want to dabble and they don't want to spend a lot of money, because I know that a lot of countless brands that, you know, offer leverless style controllers, they are quite premiumly priced, and for good reason. They're really good, solid. But I think if you are looking to get into the leverless market and you want to try the controllers, this is a really good option. So as you can see that I'm really impressed with this product. It's solid for what it is. It's a 3D printed piece of plastic, so it's going to be light, it's going to be compact. You know, USB-C, you've got various SOCD modes, you've got LED lighting that you can change. You can kind of increase or decrease the brightness. Legit kill switches, which are really good. You have the menu button, so you have your start button, you have your select for reset, and you have different buttons here like L3, R3. So you have that functionality. You have LED screen. It's actually an OLED screen, so that's nice. And yeah, you can see your inputs. It's just a complete package, and for $30 is an insane deal. So yeah, if you want to check out this product, I think I'll leave it in the description or in the pinned comment somewhere. I hope you enjoyed. Peace.